does not change. That is true. It was true. It is true. It always will be true. And so that's my lead in to looking at some scripture. Let's turn to Hebrews chapter 6, and start reading verse 13. I'll put it in a little context. I realize Eric taught some classes from Hebrews just recently, but we'll read this passage and then try to put it in a little bit of context. For when God made a promise to Abraham, because he could swear by no one greater, he swore by himself, saying, surely blessing I will bless you, and multiplying I will multiply you. And so after he had patiently endured, he obtained the promise. For men indeed swear by the greater, and an oath for confirmation is for them an end of all dispute. Thus God, determining to show more abundantly to the heirs of promise the immutability. I didn't really do a very good job pronouncing that. I'm better at just immutable. But immutability, that was better. He confirmed it by an oath, that by two immutable things in which it is impossible for God to lie, we might have a strong consolation, who have fled for refuge to lay hold of the hope set before us. This hope we have as an anchor of the soul, both sure and steadfast, which enters the presence behind the veil. Making a reference to the Old Testament temple, the tabernacle, the presence of God behind the veil. And so what really are we seeing here? We're seeing the Hebrew writer talk to us about the confidence that we can have in God and his immutable nature, that he does not change. He's not turned aside by the winds of change, and he's not. There's no flaw that has to be corrected. There's no progress to be made. He's perfect in nature, and that's what the Hebrew writer is addressing. And he says, interesting here, that by two immutable things. So there's two things, and it's in the context that he's talking about. First of all, God made a promise to Abraham. He made a promise. That's one thing, and that would be enough. That would be enough. But in addition to that, God swore an oath. He made a promise, and about the promise, he swore an oath, and then it's God, the immutable God, the unchanging God, that has said these things. And therefore, what? Since God cannot lie, it's true. It's going to happen to those that are faithful and have been, as he says here, who have been patient. Yeah. And so after he had, speaking of Abraham, had patiently endured, he obtained the promise. So he continued in the faith, he endured with patience, and received the promise that had been made to me. One of the reasons why that the Old Testament stories are so important. I like it. Tim has done this a couple of times from the pulpit, where he's mentioned, particularly, probably 100% of the time, when he's taking a text from the Old Testament, and I always remember what he said. He said, these Old Testament stories, they're not just for children. they're not just for children. They're for us, and we can benefit by reading the stories. And evidently the Hebrew writer agreed with that because he mentions him and his patient endurance. And then I'm about to ask another question, so please get ready for it. And if you, I promised I was gonna. I didn't make an oath, but I promised that I was gonna kind of bring it into context. But look in verses 9 through 12. Hebrew writer in my translation says in verse 12 that you do not become sluggish, but imitate those through faith and patience inherit the promises. So that's the point of this, is don't get weary and give up. Persevere in patience, and remember Abraham. I'm paraphrasing now, of course, but that's the whole idea there. Remember Abraham. He was patient. He persevered, and he received the promises. And we can too. And he says this hope that we have, a promise, generates hope, doesn't it? If someone has promised something that to us that's beneficial, that is to be desired, and it's a promise, so it's out there in the future, the gift, the reward, whatever it is still out there, it generates hope. And the writer's saying this hope we have as an anchor of the soul. And so the question that I'm coming to is this: do you think it's a good thing if we are up here in the morning and we're down here in the afternoon, and we're up and energetic one week, and the next week we're not doing anything? If one day someone speaks to us and we give them a kind response, the next day they speak to us and they get their head bitten off. And I'm describing in general the way people behave at times. And I'm asking this, is that good for us to be always kind of where someone's never going to know what to expect from us, and we're high one minute and low the next, and I'm not sure I'm using, all the right words to describe it. Is that a good thing? Is that a good thing? Am I the only person that thinks that's a bad thing?
Somebody comes up to speak to you, or you go speak to somebody else, you're not going to know what kind of response you're going to get.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they tell you to shut up.
And so, and so I think generally we would probably agree that if I'm like that, I'm a pretty difficult person to be around, and so no, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing, Michael.
I think, using what the scripture just said, I think it's a person that's like that is what you anchor to. I think I like the word he says. What are you anchored? What your faith is? Who holds you together?
Yeah.
And if your faith is in Christ, no matter whatever circumstances you are faced with, you know what holds you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you anchor to the right thing. We all are anchored to something. If you anchor to the right thing, which is Jesus, then you're not going to be.
If we are anchored to something that's changeable, guess what? We're going to be changeable. And to stay with the nautical illustration here of an anchor, a ship's anchor. Ship throws out its anchor, and maybe there's shore leave. Passengers or sailors come back, and the ship is left the harbor and it's over there, it's moved. And so that's kind of the idea, isn't it? It didn't work. Anchor was faulty. Where it was anchored, what it was anchored to was faulty. I've seen that happen. Someone thought they anchored their boat up, and it's crossed the lake now, and it's what are you anchored in? And really, the Hebrew writer is saying we need to have this anchor of the soul that's anchored with God, who's immutable and unchanging, and He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And so, and that's the point. And it's sure and steadfast, and that's what we need to successfully navigate this life, is to have that anchor and to have that hope. What are we without hope? What are we without hope? We're lost and we're weak.
The key thing that you were saying, you used the word immutable, if we're not anchored, it's only two things, and that's God and the Word of God and the promise that He made. So if we anchor to anything else, then
Yep.
we're gonna lose the battle.
Yep. Prophet Malachi, chapter 3 and verse 6, we have this declaration for God. He says, "For I am the Lord, I do not change." I do not change. That's hard to get our minds around, isn't it? Because I'm talking about how some people are in the extreme, but we're all like this somewhat, aren't we? I mean, to some degree, that we change about certain things. We certainly change physically over the years, but we've gone through changes, and at times it's not been good, and hopefully we're making progress. That's the other thing the Hebrew writer mentions. We need to be making progress. The peril of not progressing. Larry?
Well, we ourselves cannot be immutable, but as we have studied, we base ourselves upon someone who is, therefore our lives will follow and have as little change as we can manage. Have you ever noticed the change in a person once they establish or said, "I'm going to be a Christian," and baptized, and how they change because they place their life based upon an anchor that changes for the good?
Yeah. And I've heard it put this way, God does not change, but we must change. We must change. And He is where we put this, our confidence, our faith, our trust, and we build this endurance into our lives, and we look forward to the promises that He has made, and we have this hope that benefits us greatly and eternally. How much more time do I have? I think I heard a bell. 3 minutes? Any more comments tonight?
I was just thinking that as human beings, we're always looking for stability. In other words, if we do something in a certain way and we get the results that we're after, then we're going to do that same
Yeah.
way again.
Yeah.
I know when you're driving a car, if you turn the wheel to the left, you expect the thing to go to the left, right? Or to the right.
And when it doesn't, you're not happy, right?
And you're surprised.
Yeah.
We're not good at picking up on surprises.
Yeah.
When you're flying an airplane, there are things that you do out of habit because that's the way you've been trained, and the airplane reacts the way you've been trained. When it doesn't, you're in a world of hurt.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Floyd. Experienced trainer of pilots speaking there. And
I've flown with some people that did some things that I was Especially new students, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Children need stability too, and that's
Yes, well, yes. Peggy made the comment that our children need stability. There has to be some type of order and stability for children to prosper and really for us to prosper. That in anything we do, there has to be some order. There has to be some stability for us to accomplish things. And Revis?
Talking to a juvenile court judge one day that, and I asked several questions, what causes these young men to be in his court? And he said a lack of stability in the home.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, he says that is the number one cause.
yeah, yeah.
So that relates back to what we're talking
Yeah.
about. Without it, things go awry.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everyone, for your participation, and hopefully we'll continue this thoughts about the immutability of God and what that means to us and His promises. And so, hope everyone has a great remainder of the week. Thank you.